She's a doctor, and you're absolutely worthless. A complete embarrassment to this family. My dad sneered at dinner. Why can't you be successful like your sister, instead of being such a pathetic disappointment? I replied, then go ask your star daughter for help, right before she lost everything and they came crawling to me for money. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hi Reddit. So this happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still processing it. Figured I'd share, because honestly, some of you guys might relate to having that one sibling who can do no wrong while you're treated like the family disappointment. Quick background. I've, 28 male, been a firefighter for about 5 years now. My sister Jessica, 30 female, is a doctor. Guess which one my parents think is the success story? If you guessed Jessica, ding ding ding, you win absolutely nothing except the joy of being right about obvious family dynamics. Let me paint you a picture of how this plays out at literally every family gathering. We walk into my parents' house for Sunday dinner, and within 30 seconds, I'm not exaggerating, I've timed it, my mom is introducing Jessica to whoever's around as our daughter, the doctor. She says it like that too, with the emphasis, like she's announcing royalty or something. Meanwhile, I get, and this is Ryan. That's it. Sometimes, if they're feeling generous, they'll add, he works for the city, which makes it sound like I'm some desk jockey pushing papers, instead of someone who literally saves people for a living. The worst part? They act like Jessica discovered the cure for cancer or something. Don't get me wrong, being a doctor is respectable work, but you'd think she was personally responsible for ending world hunger the way they carry on. She works at some private practice doing routine checkups and prescribing antibiotics. But to hear my parents tell it, she's out there performing brain surgery on orphans. Christmas last year was peak ridiculous. We're all sitting around the table, and my uncle asks what I've been up to. Before I can even answer, my dad jumps in with, Jessica just got promoted to senior physician at her practice. Cool story, Dad, except nobody asked about Jessica. And also, that's not even how doctor promotions work. But whatever. So, I mentioned that I just got my certification for hazmat response, which is actually a pretty big deal in my field. Took months of training, means I can handle chemical spills and dangerous material incidents. My mom literally rolls her eyes and goes, that's nice, dear, in the same tone you'd use for a 5-year-old showing you a crayon drawing. Then Jessica, because she can't help herself, adds, Ryan, when are you going to get a career that actually requires skill? She said it with this little smirk, like she was being playful, but there was nothing playful about it. The whole table went quiet. My dad actually laughed. Jessica saves lives with her brain. You just spray water and hope for the best. I sat there for a second, trying to decide if I wanted to blow up Christmas dinner or just let it slide like I always do. I went with option 2 because that's what I always do. But man, it stung. Here's what really gets me though. They act like being a firefighter is some backup plan for guys who couldn't make it in the real world. Like I just woke up one day and thought, gee, I guess I'll go run into burning buildings because I'm too stupid for college. I've got a bachelor's degree in emergency management. I had to pass physical fitness tests that would probably put Jessica in the hospital. I'm certified in emergency medical response, technical rescue, and hazardous materials. I can drive a 40-foot ladder truck through downtown traffic, coordinate multi-agency emergency responses, and yeah, I've pulled people out of burning buildings. But sure, I just spray water. The hypocrisy is what kills me. They're constantly going on about how Jessica helps people, how she's making a difference in the world. Last month, my mom shared some post on social media about healthcare workers being heroes. Tagged Jessica and everything. You know what I did last month? Pulled a family of 4 out of their car after a drunk driver T-boned them at an intersection. Performed CPR on the dad until the paramedics arrived. He lived, by the way. His kids get to have their father because I was there and knew what to do. Did that make it into Mom's social media tribute to heroes? Take a wild guess. 2 weeks ago, we had a house fire on Maple Street. Single mom with 3 kids, place was already fully involved when we got there. My crew and I went in through the back, found the youngest kid, maybe 6 years old, hiding under his bed on the 2nd floor. Smoke was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Floor was starting to buckle from the heat below. I carried that kid out on my back while the ceiling was literally falling around us. The whole family made it out alive because we got there fast and did our jobs right. That kid's mom hugged me so tight I thought she was going to crack a rib, crying and thanking me over and over. But Jessica prescribes blood pressure medication, and she's the one who saves lives with her brain. The crazy part is, I used to look up to Jessica when we were kids. She was always the smart one, always had her life figured out. I was proud when she got into med school, genuinely happy for her success. I thought maybe once she became a doctor, once she had everything she wanted, she'd ease up on the superiority complex. Instead, it got worse. Now she had credentials to back up what she'd always believed, that she was better than me in every way that mattered. The comments started getting more pointed. Maybe if you'd applied yourself in school like I did, you could have had a real career. It's never too late to go back to school, Ryan. Don't you want more than just a government job? Just a government job. Like job security, good benefits, and a pension don't matter. Like serving your community is somehow less valuable than whatever she does in her air-conditioned office. My parents eat it up too. They nod along like she's dropping wisdom instead of just being a condescending pain in the rear. Sometimes I think they forget I can hear them when they talk about us to their friends. Jessica's doing so well, we're so proud. Ryan, well, at least he has steady work. At least. Like I'm some charity case they're stuck with. The thing that really bothers me isn't even the disrespect, though that's annoying enough. It's that they genuinely don't understand what I do or why it matters. In their minds, if you're not wearing a suit or making six figures, you're not really successful. They've never asked about my job beyond how's work? They've never come to see the station, never asked about the training or the equipment or what a typical day looks like. They know more about Jessica's office politics than they do about the work I've dedicated my life to. I've thought about just telling them off, laying out exactly what I think about their attitude and their favorites. But every time I get close, I think about how it would just confirm what they already believe, that I'm the problem child who can't handle criticism, who gets defensive when people point out his limitations. So I keep my mouth shut and smile through another family dinner where Jessica gets treated like visiting royalty and I get treated like the hired help. But you know what? I sleep pretty well at night. Can't say the same for everyone in my family, as it turns out. It started about 8 months ago, though I didn't know anything was wrong until way later. Jessica had been acting weird at family gatherings, quieter than usual, which for her was saying something. She's normally the type to dominate every conversation, especially when it comes to talking about her latest accomplishments or some breakthrough case she handled. But suddenly she was just there, sitting at the table, picking at her food, letting mom and dad carry the conversation without jumping in to remind everyone how brilliant she was. I actually thought it was an improvement, to be honest. The first real sign something was off came during Easter dinner. My aunt was asking Jessica about work, and instead of launching into her usual speech about how rewarding it is to help patients and how challenging the medical field is, Jessica just said, "It's fine," and changed the subject. My parents looked confused but didn't push it. I figured maybe she was just having an off day or dealing with some workplace drama. Doctors have egos, right? Maybe someone at her practice wasn't kissing her rear end enough. The next weird thing happened the next month. We were at my parents' house for a barbecue, and Jessica's phone kept ringing. Every time it did, she'd look at it, get this panicked expression, and let it go to voicemail. After the fourth or fifth call, my dad asked if everything was okay. "Just work stuff," she said, but her voice was shaky. "You know how it is." Except I didn't know how it was, because she'd never acted like this about work calls before. Usually, she'd answer the phone all professional and important, making sure everyone could hear how in demand she was. Around this time, I started noticing other changes. Jessica looked tired all the time, like she wasn't sleeping. She'd lost weight and not in a good way. She seemed jumpy, distracted. During conversations, you could tell she wasn't really listening, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. My parents noticed too, but they handled it the way they handle everything Jessica related, by making excuses and pretending it was normal. They'd say she's working so hard. They'd say, "The medical field is so demanding. She's probably just stressed from helping so many people." The breaking point came in August. We were supposed to have dinner together, the whole family, for my dad's birthday. Jessica showed up 40 minutes late, which was completely unlike her. She's usually early to everything, partly because she likes making an entrance and partly because she hates when other people are late. But this time she stumbled in, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her hair was messy, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had these dark circles under her eyes that made her look like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Sorry I'm late," she mumbled, sliding into her chair without making eye contact with anyone. My mom immediately went into protective mode. "Sweetie, are you feeling okay? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," Jessica snapped, which was also unlike her. She's usually all smiles and charm at family dinners, especially when mom's fussing over her. The whole dinner was awkward. Jessica barely touched her food, kept checking her phone, and gave one-word answers to every question. My parents kept exchanging worried looks, but didn't know what to do. Finally, my dad tried to lighten the mood by asking about her work. "How are things at the practice, honey? Any interesting cases lately?" Jessica's reaction was not what any of us expected. She set down her fork, looked at him with this expression I'd never seen before, part anger, part fear, part something else I couldn't identify, and said, "Can we please not talk about work?" The table went dead silent. In 28 years of family dinners, I had never heard Jessica say she didn't want to talk about work. It was like hearing a fish say it didn't want to talk about water. My parents were completely lost. This was their perfect daughter, their pride and joy, acting like someone they didn't recognize. They tried a few more times to start normal conversation, but Jessica was clearly somewhere else mentally. She left right after dinner, claiming she had an early morning. No lingering around for coffee and compliments like usual. No staying late to catch up with everyone. She just grabbed her purse and bolted. After she left, my parents spent an hour trying to figure out what was wrong. They came up with every excuse in the book. She was overworked, she was dating someone new and didn't want to talk about it. She was dealing with a difficult patient situation. "Maybe she's just going through a rough patch," my mom said. "You know how demanding her job is." I didn't say anything, but I was thinking the same thing they were probably thinking deep down, but didn't want to admit. This wasn't just a rough patch. This was someone whose world was falling apart. The calls started a few weeks later. Jessica would call my parents at weird hours, sometimes late at night, sometimes early in the morning. They'd talk in hushed voices, and whenever I was around, they'd change the subject or take the call in another room. I could tell something was seriously wrong, but nobody was talking. My parents would have these worried expressions when they thought nobody was looking, and they started asking weird questions about my job. "Ryan, you have good insurance through the city, right?" my mom asked one day out of nowhere. "Yeah, why?" "Oh, just wondering. And your job is secure? No budget cuts or anything like that?" It was a strange question coming from someone who'd spent years acting like my job was barely legitimate. But when I asked why she wanted to know, she just said she was curious. The whole family dynamic started shifting in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. My parents were still treating Jessica like the golden child, but there was this undercurrent of anxiety that wasn't there before. They'd praise her accomplishments, but it felt forced, like they were trying to convince themselves as much as anyone else. And Jessica was becoming a ghost of herself. The confident, superior person who used to dominate every conversation was turning into someone who barely spoke. I probably should have been enjoying watching my perfect sister struggle with whatever was going on. For years, I'd fantasized about her getting knocked down a peg, about my parents seeing that their golden child wasn't as perfect as they thought. But honestly, watching it happen in real life was just weird and uncomfortable. She was still my sister, even if she'd been treating me like garbage for most of our adult lives. And seeing my parents slowly realize that something was seriously wrong with their perfect daughter was almost as strange as watching Jessica herself fall apart. I had no idea how bad things really were until the phone call came in September. I was getting ready for bed after a long shift when my phone started buzzing. Jessica's name popped up on the screen. Now, Jessica calling me directly was already weird enough. We barely talked outside of family gatherings, and when we did, it was usually through our parents or in group texts about holiday plans. The fact that she was calling me alone at 11 p.m. set off every alarm bell in my head. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Ryan?" Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. "I need to tell you something." "Okay," I said, sitting down on my couch. "What's going on?" There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. Then she just broke down. I'm talking full-on sobbing, the kind where you can barely get words out. "Jessica, what happened? Are you hurt?" "I'm in trouble," she managed to get out between sobs. Really bad trouble. My first thought was that someone had died, or she'd been in an accident, or something terrible had happened to her personally. I never would have guessed what she actually told me next. "I lost my license." "What do you mean you lost your license?" I asked, confused. "Like your driver's license?" "No," she whispered. "My medical license. It's gone." I sat there for a second, trying to process what she'd just said. Jessica without her medical license was like, I don't know, it was like telling me the sun had stopped working. Her entire identity, everything our parents bragged about, everything she used to make me feel small, it was all tied to being a doctor. "What happened?" I asked. And that's when the whole story came pouring out. Turns out my perfect sister had screwed up. Bad. About a year ago, she'd been treating this elderly patient for what she thought was a routine infection. Guy came in with some standard symptoms. She did a quick examination, prescribed antibiotics, and sent him home. Textbook case, according to her. Except it wasn't a routine infection. The patient actually had a serious heart condition that was causing his symptoms, and the delay in proper treatment nearly killed him. He ended up in the ICU for 3 weeks, had to have emergency surgery, and now has permanent heart damage. The family sued for malpractice. And here's the worst part. During the investigation, it came out that Jessica had been cutting corners for months, rushing through appointments, not doing thorough examinations, missing obvious signs because she was overconfident and thought she could diagnose everything at a glance. The medical board didn't just find her liable for one case. They found a pattern of negligent care going back almost 2 years. Multiple patients who'd been misdiagnosed or given inadequate treatment because Dr. Perfect was too busy or too arrogant to do her job properly. Her license was suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Then last month, they made it permanent. She's banned from practicing medicine. Forever. The lawsuit is for $2.8 million, she said through her tears. My malpractice insurance is fighting it, but even if they cover some of it, I'm going to owe more money than I can ever pay back. I was speechless. This was Jessica, the person our parents held up as the standard for success, the one who was supposed to be saving lives with her brilliant medical mind, and she'd been screwing up so badly that they took away her right to practice medicine entirely. What about your job? I asked. Gone, obviously. The practice dropped me the second the board suspended my license. I've been unemployed for 4 months. 4 months. That explained all the weird behavior, the missed family events, the late-night phone calls with our parents. She'd been hiding this disaster for 4 months, while everyone still thought she was the successful doctor daughter. Ryan, I don't know what to do, she continued. I've got student loan payments I can't make, legal bills that keep growing, and no way to earn money in my field ever again. I'm about to lose my apartment. The irony was overwhelming. Here was the person who'd spent years telling me I needed to get a real career and asking when I was going to make something of myself. Meanwhile, she'd destroyed her own career so thoroughly that she was facing financial ruin and could never work as a doctor again. But what really got me was what she said next. I tried asking mom and dad for help, but they don't have any money to give me. They're barely getting by themselves. Wait, what? My parents, who acted like they were doing fine financially, who never seemed to worry about money, who could afford to help their precious daughter through medical school. They were broke? What do you mean they don't have money? I asked. Another pause. Another round of crying. They've been living paycheck to paycheck for years, Jessica admitted. The house is mortgaged to the limit. They've got credit card debt. Dad's retirement fund is almost empty. They've been pretending everything was fine, but they can barely cover their own bills. This was getting more unbelievable by the minute. My parents, who acted superior about their financial stability, who made comments about my government job like it was beneath them, were actually broke. They'd been faking financial security while building up debt and spending their retirement money. They wanted to help me, Jessica continued, but they literally don't have anything to give. Mom started crying when she had to tell me they couldn't afford it. So let me get this straight. The golden child had destroyed her career through negligence and was facing financial ruin. The parents who'd spent years acting like they were better than everyone else were actually broke and living beyond their means. And now they were all looking around wondering what to do next. Jessica, I said slowly, why are you telling me all this? Another long pause. Because you're the only one left who might be able to help. And there it was. The real reason for the call. The sister who'd called me useless, who'd asked when I was going to get a real career, who'd spent years acting like I was the family disappointment. She needed money. From me. The guy with the just a government job. I should have felt satisfied. This was everything I'd imagined in my head during those awful family dinners. The perfect daughter falling from grace, the parents realizing their golden child wasn't so golden, everyone suddenly needing help from the person they'd always dismissed. But sitting there on my couch, listening to my sister cry about losing everything she'd worked for, I mostly just felt tired. How much do you need? I asked. The number she gave me made my head spin. Between immediate bills, legal fees, and just staying afloat until she could figure out a new career, she was looking at needing over $100,000. Money I actually had, thanks to years of living below my means, good benefits, and smart investing. Money she needed from the brother she'd never respected. I know I don't have any right to ask, she said. I know I've been terrible to you, but I'm desperate, Ryan. I don't have anywhere else to turn. I told her I'd think about it and call her back. After I hung up, I sat in my living room for about an hour, trying to wrap my head around everything that had just happened. My perfect sister wasn't perfect. My financially stable parents were broke, and somehow the family failure had become the only one with his life together. But that phone call was just the beginning, because Jessica wasn't the only one who was going to come asking for help. I spent 3 days thinking about Jessica's request. Part of me wanted to help her. She was still my sister, even if she'd been treating me like garbage for years. But another part of me kept remembering every snide comment, every time she'd made me feel small, every family dinner where she'd acted like I was beneath her. $100,000. That was more than most people make in 2 years. And she wanted me to just hand it over, because suddenly I was her only option. I was still going back and forth about it when my doorbell rang on Friday evening. I figured it was a delivery, or maybe my neighbor wanting to borrow something. Instead, I opened the door to find all three of them standing on my porch. Jessica, Mom, and Dad. Together. Looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Hi, honey," my mom said, with this fake, cheerful voice that didn't match the worried expression on her face. "We were hoping we could talk to you." I knew immediately what this was about, but I played dumb. "Sure, come in. What's going on?" They filed into my living room like they were heading to a funeral. Jessica wouldn't make eye contact, just stared at her hands. My parents sat on the edge of the couch looking uncomfortable, which was weird because they'd been to my place plenty of times before. My dad cleared his throat. "Son, Jessica told us about your conversation the other night." "Okay," I said, settling into my chair across from them. "And, well," my mom jumped in, "we wanted to talk to you about the situation as a family." There was that word again. Family. Funny how I was suddenly part of the family when they needed something from me. "What situation is that?" I asked, even though I knew exactly what they meant. My parents looked at each other, then at Jessica, who was still studying her fingernails, like they held the secrets of the universe. "Ryan," my dad started, "your sister is going through a really difficult time right now. We all are." "I can see that," I said. Jessica filled me in on most of it. "Then you understand how serious this is," my mom said. "She's facing financial ruin. Her career is over. The legal bills alone are going to bankrupt her." I nodded and waited for them to get to the point. I had a feeling I knew where this was heading. "We tried to help," my dad continued. "We really did, but we just don't have the resources right now to give her what she needs." "Times have been tough for everyone," my mom added. "We're not in the position we used to be." Still waiting for them to actually ask me for anything. I wasn't going to make this easy for them. My dad leaned forward. "Ryan, we know it's a big ask, but this is family we're talking about. Family helps family when times get tough." I almost laughed at that. Family helps family? Where was that philosophy all those years when they were making fun of my career choices and treating me like the family disappointment? "You have a good job," my mom added. "Steady income, good benefits. You've always been responsible with money." Responsible with money. Code for, you live like a cheapskate while we spend everything we make and then some. They all sat there looking at me expectantly, like this was some obvious decision I should make without thinking twice about it. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," I said slowly. "Jessica lost her medical license because she was negligent with her patients. She's being sued for millions of dollars. She can't work in her field ever again. And now you want me to give her over $100,000 to bail her out of the mess she created?" My parents shifted uncomfortably. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. "It's not that simple," my mom said defensively. "These things happen in medicine. Sometimes there are complications that aren't anyone's fault." "Mom," I said, "losing your license permanently isn't something that happens because of complications. That's something that happens when you consistently provide substandard care to multiple patients over an extended period of time." Jessica flinched like I'd slapped her. My dad's face darkened. "Ryan, there's no need to be harsh about this," he said. "Your sister is going through enough without you making her feel worse." "I'm not trying to make anyone feel worse," I replied. "I'm just trying to understand why you think this is my responsibility." "Because we're family," my mom said again. Like that explained everything. "Family," I repeated. "Right. The same family that spent years telling me I needed to get a real career. The same family that laughed when I mentioned my job accomplishments. The same family that acted like being a firefighter was something to be embarrassed about." The room went dead silent. Jessica was crying again, but quietly this time. My parents looked like they'd been caught doing something they knew was wrong. "That's not fair," my dad said finally. "We've always been proud of you." "Have you?" I asked. "Because I have a pretty clear memory of you telling people that Jessica saves lives with her brain while I just spray water and hope for the best." He had the decency to look ashamed at least. "We may have said some things we shouldn't have," my mom admitted. "But that doesn't change the fact that Jessica needs help right now." You're right, I said. It doesn't change that. But it does change how I feel about providing that help. They all looked at each other nervously. This clearly wasn't going the way they'd hoped. What do you mean? Jessica asked. I mean, I said, standing up, that for years you've all treated me like I was the failure in this family. Like my job didn't matter, my life choices were wrong, and I was somehow less valuable than Jessica because I didn't have a medical degree. I started pacing around the room. I'd been holding this in for so long that now that it was coming out, I couldn't stop it. And now, when it turns out that the golden child destroyed her own career through negligence and you're all broke and desperate, suddenly you remember that family helps family. Suddenly, my steady government job doesn't seem so useless. Suddenly, the responsible guy with good benefits is exactly who you need. My parents were both staring at the floor now. Jessica was full on sobbing. I stopped pacing and looked at all three of them sitting there. Jessica, who'd lost everything because of her own arrogance and carelessness. My parents, who'd spent years playing favorites and were now facing the consequences of their financial irresponsibility. They were all looking at me like I was their last hope. The guy they'd never thought was good enough was suddenly the only one who could save them. And you know what? For the first time in my adult life, I was the one with all the power in this family dynamic. No, I said finally. The word hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. All three of them stared at me like they couldn't believe what they'd just heard. What? My mom whispered. I said no. I'm not giving Jessica the money. The reaction was immediate and exactly what I expected. My mom's face went white. My dad's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. And Jessica started crying harder. Ryan, you can't be serious, my mom said, her voice shaking. This is your sister we're talking about. My dad stood up, and I could see the anger building in his face. This is not the time for petty grudges, son. Your sister is in real trouble here. Petty grudges? I almost laughed. Dad, this isn't about grudges. This is about consequences. What do you mean consequences? My mom asked. I sat back down and looked at all three of them. Jessica lost her medical license because she was negligent. She's facing a lawsuit because she didn't do her job properly. She's broke because she made bad decisions. These aren't things that happened to her. These are the results of choices she made. Jessica finally looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Ryan, please. I know I was wrong about everything. I know I treated you badly. But I'm begging you here. I'll lose everything. You've already lost everything, Jessica, I said quietly. Your license is gone forever. Your career is over. You owe more money than you can ever pay back. Me giving you $120,000 isn't going to change any of that. My mom stood up now too, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. Ryan, honey, please reconsider. We're a family. We stick together. Are we? I asked. Because for the past 10 years, it's felt more like you had one daughter and one disappointment. You stuck together with Jessica just fine. I was just the guy who showed up to family dinners so you could have someone to compare her to. That's not true, my dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Name one time, just one, where you defended me when Jessica was being condescending. One time where you told her to stop making jokes about my career. One time where you acted like you were proud of what I do for a living. The silence that followed was deafening. They couldn't do it because it had never happened. I thought so, I said. Jessica wiped her eyes and tried a different approach. What if I paid you back? With interest. With what money? I asked. You can't work as a doctor anymore, and I'm guessing you don't have any other marketable skills. What are you going to do? Work retail for the next 40 years to pay me back? Her face crumpled at that, and I almost felt bad. Almost. There has to be something we can work out, my mom said desperately. Some kind of payment plan. Or maybe you could just help with the most urgent bills. Mom, stop, I said firmly. I've made my decision. The answer is no. My dad's face was getting redder by the minute. You know what, Ryan? Maybe Jessica was right about you all along. Maybe you are useless if you can sit here and watch your family fall apart when you have the power to help. And there it was. The real them, coming out now that they weren't getting what they wanted. No more fake apologies or pretending they'd been wrong about me. So what are we supposed to do? Jessica asked through her tears. I don't know, I said honestly. Figure it out. Get a job. Declare bankruptcy. Move back in with mom and dad. I really don't care anymore. My dad was shaking with anger now. Fine. You want to be selfish? You want to abandon your family when we need you most? That's your choice. But don't expect us to welcome you back when you change your mind. They all stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I think it was finally sinking in that I was serious, that I wasn't going to cave and give them what they wanted. As my dad walked toward the door, he threw one last line over his shoulder. warning that I'd regret this someday. He said when I was older, I'd look back and realize what I'd thrown away, and that the weight of this decision would finally hit me. My mom lingered for a moment, like she wanted to try one more time to change my mind. Instead, she just shook her head sadly and followed my dad out. Jessica was the last to leave. She stood up slowly, looking defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "What if it was you?" she asked. "What if you were the one who lost everything and needed help? Wouldn't you want your family to be there for you?" I thought about that for a second. "You know what, Jessica? If I had destroyed my career through negligence and ended up broke and desperate, I wouldn't have the nerve to ask for help from someone I'd spent years treating like garbage. I'd figure it out on my own, the way I've been doing my whole life." She didn't have an answer for that. She just walked out and closed the door behind her. I stood in my living room for a while after they left, waiting to feel guilty or sad or regretful. But mostly I just felt relieved. For the first time in my adult life, I'd stood up to them completely. I'd said what I really thought and refused to be their backup plan. My phone started ringing about an hour later. It was my mom, probably calling to try guilt-tripping me some more. I let it go to voicemail. Then Jessica called. Then my dad. I ignored them all. Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. Long voicemails full of accusations, guilt trips, and desperate pleas. My mom left a message saying I was destroying the family. My dad called me selfish and ungrateful. Jessica sent text messages apologizing again and begging me to reconsider. I deleted everything without listening to most of it. 2 weeks later, the calls stopped. I figured they'd either found another solution or given up on trying to change my mind. Either way, I was fine with it. I heard through my aunt that Jessica had moved back in with my parents and gotten a job at a retail store. My parents had to downsize their house and were struggling financially, but they were managing. None of them reached out to me again. And you know what? I slept better than I had in years.